almost at Christmas for us. So
Okay.
we give you.
Thank you. I'll start again. You'll notice Susie's not here. They've had the Ofsted call at me agreeing, which you're probably aware of. So she's busy in lots of meetings with Ofsted inspectors. So I'm going to chair this evening's meeting. So thank you very much for attending. We really appreciate your time. Probably have not picked the best week for a primary meeting in SATS week, and we will make a note of that so we don't do the same next year. So like I say, we'll try not to keep you a huge amount of time, but we've got quite a few bits and pieces to get through on the agenda today. And actually, with a smaller group, it can be super helpful because it just means that we get to really unpick some of your thoughts and feedback in a little bit more detail, which is super, super helpful for us. So yeah, if we can move the slide on, Paul, what have we got next? Oh, hang on, have we got action points from last time's meeting? So just take a second to consider those action points on your screen. I'm not going to read them to you.
These are things that we covered at last meeting, and we'll go over again a bit today.
Lovely. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we always spend quite a bit of time scrutinising our associate teachers and asking them for feedback on the course. We've got a summary report for you, so I'm just going to pop that into the chat now. And what we're going to start the meeting by doing is just giving you 3 minutes. It won't take you too long. Just have a look at the report, and we'd really like you to consider any key questions that you've got and any suggested actions, and then we can take those forward into next year. So 3 minutes, it's 1:45, and that'll give people time to join too if they're a little bit late. Just shout if you can't access it. Okay, that's just under 3 minutes. So what I'm going to ask you to do just in the last 30 seconds is just to consider some key questions for the team and any suggested actions that you might have in order to address some of the points that are raised. Okay, anyone like to go first and jump in with a question? Any comments?
Hi, Catherine. Just a quick question. Sorry.
It's all right, Amy.
It's okay. Hi. So it was mentioned that obviously it talked about the weakest session was assessment in EYFS with regards to the PES sessions for early years 3 to 7, which was on page, I don't know what page 3. I think it was.
That's right.
Was there any kind of further information given from the associate teachers as to why they felt that didn't quite meet what they needed?
Amy, thanks. Really good question. Thank you. That's really helpful. I just want to clarify a couple of things before I go to Jane to answer that.
Yeah.
The sessions are marked out of 4, and so you're quite right. The session is slightly lower, but I think we have to just put it in the
still
context
high. Oh no,
that it's still a highly rated session.
No,
Absolutely. It's not rated low. It's just slightly lower than the others.
Because it actually says, it says the weakest session was assessment in EYFS, and I know it's still high because it's still 89.25%. But I'm just thinking, because it's obviously early years 3 to 7, that's kind of a key aspect of their training. So I'm just wondering whether there's anything we can do as providers, that maybe if there's some kind of feedback that was given from the associate teachers that we can ensure we kind of address while they're on their final placements.
Thank you. Jane, can I come to you for that?
Yeah, of course you can. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Yeah, what I did with any scores which were lower than the others, and like you say, it's still quite high, is I met with each associate teacher separately just to discuss it through.
Okay.
And I chose 3 that had rated that a little bit lower than others.
Yes.
And their main feedback was they felt they were reading from slides a lot during the session instead of doing. So we have got a new 3 to 7 lead in place for, she started already.
Yes.
So all of this has been fed back, and Jessica's now going to take the lead on all of those sessions.
Okay, that's brilliant. So maybe in school, if that's they felt maybe we can kind of work alongside them to look at those ELGs and actually what they look like in that practical context. And
absolutely.
Kind of, yeah,
it was fine. More about the moderation of the assessments of them. So we were getting towards the end of that year. They did the assessment they did on baseline was really well received, but then this one is still high, but that was the feedback, that it wasn't as practical as they hoped it would be.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you very much, Jane.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Amy. Tracy, you got your hand up there?
Yeah, to be fair, the scores are all really strong, which is lovely to see. You know, it shows there's a wealth of experience across the trust. And I think feeding on from what Amy was saying, those ones that maybe were just slightly lower than others. I know, Jane, in the past, you've been heavily involved in that kind of planning. I assume somebody is quality assuring all that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Looking at like how we teach with the children, that active learning. So just making sure that, are these reading from slides? Is it a lot of, pedagogy rather than the hands-on? That's all really. But it looks so good. I'm very impressed. Well done, everyone.
Oh,
the scores are amazing. I'm also really impressed. Well done.
I just wanted to add one thing in there, is just that we did with the secondary that we haven't done before, in that we're going to send you at the end of this year a school report. Sounds not what it sounds like. So if they've made any specific comments about your school over the 3 placements, we're going to send you a bit of a review, which I think you'll really appreciate, because there'll be huge amounts of positive comments there, and you can keep that for your own records. We thought that would be really helpful.
Thanks for that, Paul. Yeah, I think that'll be a real sort of benefit, and will be nice for schools to get that personalised feedback. Just a big thank you really to Jane and Ange. A lot of hard work goes into getting those sessions as highly, and I know that you don't necessarily deliver them all, but you always meet with and work really closely with the facilitators of each session. So we really think very carefully about the content, and having Jess start with us, she's only been here 2 weeks, but she's already made a fantastic start. So, Joe Evanson made a brilliant start in terms of starting that route off for us, but we think Jess will now take it to another level because she's got a little bit more time and capacity to be able to do that. So yeah, some really positive strengths, I think, there to pull out. Okay, anything else there? Does anybody else have any comments questions or suggested actions before I move on? Philippa, I can see what you put in the chat about the microphone not working. So any contributions that you've got, just pop them in the chat as we're going, if that's okay. Lovely. Okay, thank you, Paul. Next slide, please. Okay, so this section is around evaluating the ITAPs. Paul, Jane, which one of you is leading on this one?
I will, and I apologise, quite a lot on the slide. I just put the visual one with the graph to show how successful the ITAP actually was. Scaffolding was part of our adaptive teaching for the last term, and you can read them. I'm not going to read to you the practical strategies. We felt as a team it was highly successful, as it was the previous year. And from our observations going into schools, we can see those strategies are clearly embedded in our associate teachers' practice now. Another thing where we found evidence for this is at the end of each ITAP, they complete a booklet, and then after 4 weeks, they go back and reflect upon those strategies and how successful they've been. And all the SCITT team have looked through those booklets. We've got some really sophisticated reflection upon their progress with scaffolding and providing a whole range of adaptive teaching strategies to the children in your schools. And also, it was one of the strands that we really interrogated them on when they did their IPRs last term. It was one that we looked at their slides, we looked at any other evidence, we opened conversations regarding it. And yeah, I felt it was much stronger, and I'm sure Emma and Ange would agree from last year. They're nodding, so they do agree. And I've just got a couple of comments taken from the associate teachers there, which was part of the core survey. I'll just leave you to read through those for a second. I mean, those of you in school, like, any feedback on that, if you've got any at all? Have you actually worked with the associate teacher?
I think a really good question here, Jane, would be, you've seen and they're able to articulate their understanding of scaffolding, aren't they, through their reflections and in their professional review. But I suppose key is, are we able to see it in the practice of the associate teachers in the classrooms? Does anybody have any comments on that? We'd love to be able to capture some feedback on that as to whether you feel that the associate teachers' practice is perhaps better than it has been in previous years as a result of the ITAP. Tracy, did you have your hand up there? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We've had some really strong SCITT, and I mean, I've had SCITT students and teaching students for years, but they've been really strong this year. And on it, they're up to date, they know all the key terminology, which sometimes it takes a while for that to filter. Autumn term can almost feel like a starting point, but this time it felt like they were up and running. So when we're talking about adaptive teaching, scaffolding, behaviour strategies, they had ideas already to bring to the table, which was really good, rather than actually just being a passive learner within the groups. They were actually part of the whole PPA, and they would be bringing forward ideas to my teachers who are experienced or, had a few years teaching, but actually they're more relevant things as well. So it was really good. And they were very engaged as teachers. They'd work above and beyond. They were like putting themselves forward to do lots of volunteering stuff, like after school stuff. So no, I have to say, I think they've been a really strong cohort this year.
Thank you for that, Tracy. Really, really helpful feedback. Any other comments? Really interested in hearing if anyone's got any particular examples of perhaps where the associate teacher scaffolding practice has improved.
Deb, I think Deb's got a hand up.
Oh, Deb, sorry, go on, Deb.
I think you're on mute, Deb.
Deb, you're on mute.
Sorry. The one we had in the first term, she had some other issues to deal with, but tried really hard and she got a lot out of the ITAPs. Second term, it was a salaried SCITT and she could talk but not walk. So we didn't see it in practice all the time.
Okay.
And was doing so many observations and anything else it seemed to be to get out of the classroom, that we had conversations with Ange and Jane about whether she was actually going to pass because she was never in the classroom. So I think it depends on who you get. I wouldn't say ours were good this year. I think the SCITT the previous year were better than this year.
Okay. Yeah, and I think there's always a range, isn't there? You know, you're always going to get those that fly and those who perhaps struggle a little bit more. So no, thanks for that, Deb. Thanks for that feedback. That's always useful to hear as well. And I think there's something specific that we perhaps need to unpick in terms of the second placement for salaried trainees, where they're not in a school for quite so long, which then makes it quite difficult, I think, for them to really embed their practice when perhaps they don't know the or they don't know the school and they don't know the students quite as well. So something for us to unpick a little bit more there, Deb. So thanks for that. Any other thoughts before we move on? Okay, let's move on. Thanks, Paul. Right. Okay, so we've got writing one. Yeah.
Me again. Yeah. Sorry, I've put the writing one up because that's one that we moved from the autumn. It was not this year, but the year before. It was in the autumn term, and as a team, we felt it had less impact in the autumn term because what we wanted them to do is to teach a series of writing lessons, and we felt with them being in reception and key stage 1, and actually they probably weren't. They didn't know enough to teach series of lessons in writing because it encapsulates the whole English curriculum. So this year we moved it to the spring term, and it's been much more successful. All of them have taught series of English lessons, which included writing lessons, where we didn't necessarily get that from the start last year. So I think the timing of this has been much better this time. There was a range of practicable strategies due to the nature of each session. And I articulated that at the learning coach training and on the weekly briefing, that we would want them following the ITAP to then teach series of lessons in writing and not before, because we wanted them to be skilled enough to be able to do that successfully. So yeah, a huge improvement. And I went into at least 2 or 3 schools, including Osborne, Tracy, because I saw Kerry deliver a really effective writing lesson where she'd use all the strategies that had been taught by Helen, who delivered the ITAP. So from my point of view as well, I think it's been much more successful, the timing of it this year.
Great. Thanks.
And again, there's a few comments there. Focused a lot on the last session was on creativity and publishing children's work, which they all found really, really interesting. I know it's something we're doing across the ATLP more, but something that some of them hadn't come across before. So it was really good to spend that quality time with them doing that with Helen. Sorry, Catherine. Finish now.
Thank you. So does anybody have any specific feedback regarding the writing ITAP? Is there anything else that we should be putting in the writing ITAP? Is there anything else that Jane and Ange and the team should be considering as part of that ITAP? Have you seen an improvement in practice? We'd appreciate any feedback that you've got.
Can I just ask a quick question? Sorry, ladies and gents. All it is obviously we didn't have a trainee with us last term. However, we did have a trainee with us in the first term, and she obviously started to look at phonics. Does the understanding of phonics and the training with regards to phonics continue into kind of all the teaching practices? Does it carry on in spring for them, and then they have another one in summer, or is it just one off in the autumn term? Sorry, Jane.
Sorry, Amy. They do 4 days in the autumn term, and they have to have all taught a substantial amount of phonics in that autumn term. They don't have any more training, but each placement after, they do have a teaching of reading booklet. So wherever they're placed, they do have to meet with the reading leader, and they do have to go out and observe. And if they're in Key Stage 1, they do have to plan and teach still.
Perfect.
And if they're going to Key Stage 2, then they have to plan and teach reading lessons.
Yeah, I was just interested because obviously I was looking specifically, obviously the 3 to 7, and obviously the phonics is just obviously ongoing throughout. That's still what we're developing and things. So I was just wondering how much kind of training and support they had with that, but to have that early on and then to continue with that, obviously that understanding of reading and having that link and things.
And on some of the other English days, the 3 to 7s, they're split in the afternoon. So anything that can be revisited as part of those training sessions as well.
Yeah, I do think it's fabulous how you do separate the 3 to 7 and the 5 to 11, because in actual fact, it is early years is such a specialism, and it's just so, it is though, isn't it? It's just so, you know, it's just got its own curriculum, and it's
it's a different world, Amy.
It is. I've been in there this morning. Yes, it is. No, that's lovely.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you.
I think to come in there as well, Amy, I think that is worth just noting that, because a lot of SCITTs just will have that primary route altogether. So to have them separated out into 3 to 7, 5 to 11, I think is a really real strength of our provision. Also, the amount of phonics that we track and ensure. You know, I work as the external examiner for a couple of other SCITTs as well, and I went into one last year in the summer term and spoke to a trainee and the primary route who'd never taught phonics all the way through, and you know, I just think that's, well, it's absolutely outrageous, isn't it, that they can get to the end and get to that situation, and we would be really confident that that wouldn't happen as part of our provision because of the way it's tracked and monitored throughout. So yeah, thanks for that question, really helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next slide please, Paul.
Okay. Do you want me to talk to this one?
Yes, please.
Okay, no problem. So yeah, really, really pleased to tot up the numbers the other day, that the fact that we've trained 62 learning coaches with tier 1 training. And we talked, I think, at the last meeting about how impactful it has been, not just for the associate teachers, but also like across whole schools and whole staff bodies that have taken some of the training and really rolled it out on a sort of wider scale, which is amazing. And like it says, that quote on the side there about high quality mentorship driving school improvement, I think is really powerful. And obviously this year the government have agreed to fund that training and any additional training that learning coaches have had. We're going to talk to you shortly about how that's going to work. But the West Midlands ITT partnership all agree that tier 1 training is really, really vital, and are committed to continuing with that, really. We're going to send you the placement offers spreadsheet out within the next day or two. And I suppose it's more difficult in primary to have that sustainability because of teachers moving year groups and things like that. But obviously it's something to consider, that we'd like the turnover to be as low as possible so that we don't have to keep releasing staff to do that tier 1 training as successful as it is. We've actually booked in 2 dates for that. If it's an ATLP school, it's actually a training day on the 4th of July. So we've got tier 1 training for new learning coaches on that date at Anna Seaward, and then a mop-up session for people that can't attend that on the 19th of September. And then as we've always done, that's the training about mentorship and instructional coaching and so forth. But we also do curriculum and systems so that they understand our course curriculum structure and documents as well. And that is booked in for the afternoon of the 17th of September. And we are trying to think about ways that we can continue to develop our learning coaches after that initial tier 1 training in a bit more of a bespoke way. But in terms of the funding, Catherine's going to talk to you about how you're going to claim the money.
Yep, I'm doing the money slot here. So we talked to you, I think, at the last couple of meetings about the funding that you get for ITT mentor training hours, which is super helpful. But the DFE portal for accessing that funding is now open. So this is the point where you actually need to do something about it, not just listen to me talking about it. So as you know, per mentor, you can receive up to £876, but that's prorated per hour, depending on how many hours mentors have spent in training. And I think the thing to remember here is, at the beginning of the year, mentors had to do the 20 hours, but then the DFE rode back on that. So we're in a situation now where most of them haven't done the full 20 hours. It's more likely to be between around 13 and 14, I would guess. Now, what we're going to do is send an email to your school, and we'll copy professional coaches in, and we will confirm how many hours, how many mentor training hours your school should claim for. Because what happens is, when you claim on that portal for the hours, it then comes to us and we have to approve that claim. And then the DfE will take 10% of those claims and actually audit them. So we've got to make sure it's accurate. So rather than you just sort of guess and maybe not too sure how many mentor hours, we've tracked that really carefully over this year. So what we're asking you to do is not do anything to submit that claim until we've confirmed those mentor training hours with your school. And we're just doing a little bit of an audit because it's the last lot of training really this week for this year's mentors. So we should have that out to you. We're hoping by the end of this week, I would imagine. The DfE are emailing schools, not all together. They're happening sort of week by week. So wait for that email invitation. In most cases, it'll go to your head teacher, but basically it will go to the person who is registered as the contact on Get Information About Schools. Then you use your DfE login to sign in. You claim just for your ITT mentors. ECF mentors is something completely different, but make sure it matches when you claim the letter that we send through to you. You also need to just double check that the name of the mentor matches their name on the teacher register. So for example, if they've got married, if they change their name, that's going to cause a problem if it doesn't match. So just double check that too. You'll need the mentor's teacher reference numbers. You'll need the mentor's date of birth, but really that should be a process that should be done by your finance contact or your HR contact, but you'll probably just need to make sure you nudge them to make sure you don't lose out on any funding, because the last thing we want is the DfE retaining funding that is earmarked for schools. So let's make sure we get all of the funding that we're due within our schools. So yeah, any questions around that? I think I've summarised it. I'm giving you all the information you need. Basically, wait for the email from me, and then that process should be straightforward. If you've got when the email comes to you, if you've got any queries and what we say doesn't match your records, then come back to us and let's get it right between ourselves before you go through that DfE portal. Any questions about that, or is that straightforward? Hopefully it will be. Fab.
Okay, so just a bit of an update on recruitment. We have now recruited 12 for September, which you can see is significantly down on what it was last year. We're continuing to push through a lot of channels. The recruitment at the Train to Teach event on Saturday was fairly poor in terms of the interest that we had. We've had lots of people that have been seeking visa sponsorship, which has created sometimes a bit of a barrier for us, but we are continuing to recruit at least until the end of term, if not beyond that, to hit closer to our target figure. We've done quite a lot of marketing across the region, and we're really pleased to see a lot of primary schools have put up the banner promoting us. We're trying to increase our social media presence by people power and doing sort of case studies of people who are in their training year, or people who are learning coaches, or people that have been employed as ECTs in your school. So we're trying to increase the visibility of our brand really as wide as we can. There were 2 resources that have gone out to school through the Teaching School Hub. The first one is a recruitment and retention audit tool, and that's designed so that schools can really think carefully about what they're doing to retain and recruit teachers, and that's not just initial teacher training, that's beyond that as well. And we've also produced a really comprehensive resource pack, which is there to support schools in terms of marketing, advertising, and that includes lots of case studies and things. So you may have already come across that. If you haven't, we'll send, when we send the PowerPoint out, the links to those 2 things you can find on the Teaching School Hub website, but I'll also they're in the notes section of the PowerPoint. We've just really wanted your thoughts about if there's anything more you think we could be doing that we're not doing. And I think the school communities are the places where we've got the biggest impact if we can get messages sent out to those areas. So does anybody have any thoughts about things we could do more?
I think the silence sort of says it all. I think you can see that we are really trying our best, and I think in previous years primary has almost filled itself without us having to do a lot of additional marketing. We're not entirely sure really we're not doing anything differently this year. It just seems that the recruitment primary is lower, and certainly we're getting a lot of feedback from candidates saying that they're struggling to afford it, and of course primary doesn't have a bursary, so that might be adding to the issue. Having said that, primary recruitment is slightly up nationally, so it's not a national issue necessarily, although it's not as good potentially as a secondary recruitment. So yeah, definitely an issue for us. We're hoping that perhaps it will pick up in the next couple of months as final year undergraduates complete their degrees and think that they might fancy trying to be a primary school teacher. But yeah, anything that you can do to support us with this, we would really appreciate it. And any bright ideas that you've got, again, just let us know. I think what would be very useful for us is, when we do send you out information and when we do tweet things and we ask you to put things, or ask your head teachers to put things in your newsletters, if you can really try and act on that, that would really help us out. Yeah,
I think because of time as well, and what we did do with the secondary people last week is we did a really brief survey. I'm going to send that out with the minutes if that's okay, and it's just for you to confirm whether you've got a banner up or not, if you'd like one, and what social media channels you use. Should only take a few minutes, but I think I'm conscious of time, so we'll move forward. Moving on to placement offers, again, we talked about trying to have some stability in the system. Because obviously the cost implications for training and the DFE funding isn't continuing next year, and I'm sure that you'll have had conversations with head teachers about capacity. We're obviously looking for as broad an offer as we can. I know the reality, there are challenges, but trying to keep the same learning coaches where we can to be able to offer as many placements as we can. And we're going to send out that request sheet, say today or tomorrow. And if we could have that back by the 6th of June, that would really help us, because that will shape our continuing recruitment, as long as we can be assured we've got the capacity. So we'll need the names of the designated learning coaches, because if they are new, we'd need to be able to invite them to that Friday, the 4th of July, or the date in September. And obviously we'll copy you into any correspondence that goes out there. We've also got a partnership agreement, as you know, which is signed annually. And then this year we've asked for the head teacher to be the signatory of it. We'd like that to continue as well. So we're going to send that out as well, but with a slightly later deadline of the 4th of July, which we do obviously need back from every school. And I think that's pretty much covered everything. Does anyone have any questions for me about placement offers?
I have about the training.
Yeah, okay, go on then.
So maybe I've missed this, sorry. The training on the 4th of July, we've got other stuff on now for our teacher day, so we couldn't attend that anyway. But if, say, my learning coach carries on from this year into next year, does she have to attend one of those 2 training sessions?
No. If they've
already new ones.
Yeah, it's only new ones for that tier 1.
Okay.
And then Philippa, I'm in terms of that, I might ask Jane's opinion on this one. What happens if we do not know what year group people are in yet? Yeah. I think it's probably important that it's the people, I think, that are important that we need to know. And if that means that you don't know the year group on the form, just put the names of the learning coach and then maybe put in brackets year group unknown. So you won't actually be able to fill in the details of the year group, I think, and then we'll work around that, if that answers your question.
You'll need to know, Paul, what year group the associate teacher was going into.
Yeah, eventually, but if it's not known by the 6th of June, we'd rather know what learning coaches we had.
Well, by the end of term, really. When's the next date? You're having something in 4th of July, be fine.
Yeah, okay, lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what it looks like basically. It's just got the year groups, and then obviously to put number 1 in which column for each term. And again, if you don't know that information at this point, just leave that bit blank, but the learning coach name and correct email address is important. And then there's a yes or no column on the right, just to say whether they've actually done the tier 1 training, been a learning coach before. And if there's any additional information you want to share with us, there's a box at the bottom. The most information that Jane and I have, the more accurate we can start planning. So that's a bit about placement requests. Employment wise, that seems to be blank because we haven't updated it. Jane, do you want to just tell us quickly on why the numbers have disappeared off there?
Trying to remember now. I think we've got 14 employed, of which 12 are in ATLP schools.
And how many are we still waiting for, who's still seeking employment?
8. I know there were some interviews last week, but I'm not sure of the outcome of those.
Okay,
good.
So yeah, there are still people out. No, it's all right. I don't think that one's saved. Let's move on to the calendar. Do you want to talk about the calendar briefly, Jane? Yeah,
but there's very little change to the calendar to what we run this year, because we felt it worked really well. There are a couple of changes, some of the titles of the sessions, particularly the ones around SEND. I met with the SEND Hub last week, and we've redesigned our offer for the associate teachers with SEND. But apart from that, there's very little change to the calendar at all. And that's only change in name.
Jane, can I just come in there? That the ITT compliance criteria from DfE was updated, and it's specifically talked about RSE in primary education. Has that been added into the programme for next year? Have we got more coverage of that?
It's not in this one that's on here, but Ange and I met last week, and Angie's working on that, and we have got a date to put it in.
Okay.
There were, I mean, this is it in draft form. There are going to be a few changes, but generally it's pretty much the same. But yes, definitely in. And Angie's nodding; she's working on that at the moment. And I'm going to the PSHE side of it. So yeah, it's definitely in there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else from your perspective as professional coaches that you think, oh, okay, have you got any questions about perhaps the calendar, anything that you feel there should be more coverage of, anything that you think perhaps hasn't been covered this year that you feel that we should take into consideration?
Can I just, I'm so sorry. Hello, can I just ask about the ITAPs? So are they continuing next year, Jane, in the same manner, or?
Yeah, they are, Amy. But what we did with the later ones, we gave school a lot more flexibility. Because in my naivety, I just put down on Thursday, the professional coach will be free to deliver this.
Yeah.
And actually, we learned pretty quickly that wasn't always possible. Yeah. So I know the days that are in school, it will be a 2.5 hour input by either a professional coach or a leader from SLT, but that can be flexible across that week.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you, Jane.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lovely. Yes, in terms of the calendar, I suppose off the back of that, we have just done quite a large review of our SEND provision across the whole course, and our external examiner, as you may or may not know, is joining us for the next 3 days. She'll actually be looking at the primary phase on Wednesday. So one of the things that she's going to be auditing with learning coaches and professional coaches with associate teachers is how they're actually prepared to be able to teach students with SEND going into their ECT year. So we'll provide you with feedback on that when we have it as well, that was there. So there's a couple of other things which are just dates for the diary. We've booked in the professional coach meetings for next year, but we're just going to cross-check that now with SATS week. And if anybody knows off the top of their head whether it is the week beginning 5th of May, that's straight after bank holiday.
It'll be the week after, Paul.
Oh, good. That's all right then.
Yeah.
There's those learning coach meetings that Jane does online with all of the learning coaches on a termly basis. The dates are in for that. And then I've just put on there those 2 training dates for new learning coaches at the bottom. And obviously, when I send this PowerPoint out to you, I'll update the employment slide as well to make sure that's accurate. But yeah, a really successful year. I think we could all agree that it wouldn't be possible without you. But there's also significant changes all the time. The Tier 1 training is something that was new for us. The ITAPs were a pilot the year before, and this year we've solidified some of that. But we're hoping like Jane said, next year there won't be significant change, and the DFE will just calm down a little bit. but we'll see. But yeah, I mean, closing thoughts for me really is just say real thank you. It's such a pleasure to work with everybody.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thanks, Jane, Ange, and well, Jess also with the start with us as well. Really appreciate everything that you're doing. Does anybody have any other business before we finish? Or any other questions?
Can I just say thank you ever so much for all your support as a school. I mean, ECTs and ITT, you know, we're really impressed, and we really do, you know, we really are thankful for all the support we get from all of you. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you ever so much from our school. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. We really appreciate you saying that as well, and we appreciate also the feedback that we get, because we very much see it as our SCITT in terms of the ITT partnership, which is why we really value any feedback, positive or otherwise, that helps to improve our programme. So yeah, thank you for that, Amy. Really appreciate that. Great, thank you very much. Lovely. So have a good evening. We finished slightly earlier as well. So yeah, you've got 20 minutes, the gift of time. So thank you. Lovely to see you all. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Can I just ask somebody a question while you're on?
Yep.
With regard to correspondence, can I just ask that I'm CC'd into emails? So like we were asked about having different staff come, I think it was like the secondary SCITT and those kind of things. Can I just ask that I'm always CC'd in them? And it just saves then our learning coaches emailing me then having to email back. Do you know what I mean? We can do it all in one go.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you,
everyone. Not a problem.
Perfect. But honestly, my teachers and the SCITT have loved it this year. So they've got just as much out of it, I think, as the SCITT, because as we say to the kids, if you can explain it to somebody else, then you really know your stuff, don't you? So thank you.
Tracy, before you go, can I just say a huge thank you, because all 4 that have been at Osborne have had the very best experience possible. Awesome. And I know it's your first year of supporting us at Osborne. I know it's not your first year,
as Osborne.
Years, but as Osborne it is, and without doubt, all 4. And you've really helped with all the ITAPs, and they've had a really good experience. So thank you.
Good. It's a tough job. They've got to have a good experience now, otherwise it puts them off, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, good luck. Hopefully the recruitment will go up.
Fingers crossed. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Paul, do you want to stop recording?
Stop recording. Doing that.